When Mara desperately seeks refuge in a stranger's embrace at Grand Central Station, she has no idea she's just fallen into the arms of billionaire Daniel Whitaker. What starts as a moment of panic becomes a dangerous game of secrets, betrayal, and unexpected love. Welcome back, dear friends and story lovers. Tonight, we bring you a tale where love is tested, secrets come to light, and fate takes an unexpected turn. Every moment will pull you in deeper, and every choice could change everything. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story touches your heart, subscribe, share it with someone who believes in true love, and hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter. Rain drummed against the glass ceiling of Grand Central Terminal like impatient fingers. The air hung thick with coffee steam, diesel fumes, and the metallic taste of anxiety that seemed to seep from the marble walls themselves. Mara Alvarez pressed her back against a cold pillar, her breath shallow as she scanned the crowd. There by the information booth, Colin's silhouette cut through the morning rush like a blade, his expensive suit pristine despite the weather outside. Even from 50 feet away, she could see the familiar tilt of his head, the way he checked his watch, with the entitlement of a man who believed the world owed him punctuality. Her divorce lawyer had warned her this might happen. Obsessive personalities don't just vanish after papers are signed, Sandra had said. Be careful. Colin's gaze swept the terminal, predatory and methodical. When his eyes began to turn her direction, panic seized Mara's chest like a vice, a tall figure in a charcoal. Woolcoat stood near the departure board, studying his phone with the focused calm of someone accustomed to control. Dark hair, strong jaw, expensive shoes that spoke of quiet wealth rather than flashy displays. Without thinking, Mara stepped toward him. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the terminal's din. "Pretend you know me." Gray eyes lifted from the phone screen to meet hers. For a heartbeat, she thought he might refuse, might step away from the desperate stranger interrupting his morning. Instead, his expression shifted, becoming something warmer, protective. "Sarah." Voice carried just enough volume, pitched with the easy familiarity of long acquaintance. "I was beginning to worry." He opened his arms, and Mara stepped into them without hesitation. His coat smelled of cedar and rain, expensive cologne mixed with something indefinably masculine. She pressed her face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath the wool. "You're safe," he murmured against her hair. "I've got you." Over his shoulder, she watched Colin's figure pause, scanning the crowd with growing frustration. The stranger's hand rested lightly on her back, protective rather than possessive. "Keep walking," he said quietly, left toward the coffee stand. They moved together through the crowd, his body angled to shield her from view. His touch remained gentle but sure, guiding rather than controlling. Past the newsstand, beyond the pastry kiosk where the scent of cinnamon fought with diesel exhaust, down a side corridor that smelled of industrial cleaner and soft pretzels. Only when they reached an alcove near the Lexington Avenue exit did Mara risk looking back. Colin stood on his toes near the information booth, mouth tight with irritation as he scanned faces that no longer included hers. "Thank you." The words came out shaky. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do." "Apologize." Up close, he was taller than she'd realized, with the contained energy of someone comfortable with power. His hair was perfectly cut, leaving no room for accident or imperfection. "Do you need to call someone, police?" "No." The word caught in her throat. "He's my ex-husband. Is not supposed to contact me directly, but he's not technically breaking any laws by being here." The stranger nodded once, understanding more than she'd said. "He won't follow you here. Do you want me to walk you out?" Shame heated her cheeks as adrenaline began to ebb. "I don't want to get you involved any more than I already have. A little late for that." The corner of his mouth ticked upward, almost a smile. "Come on." Outside, Lexington Avenue was a river of black umbrellas and yellow cabs. The morning rain had leached color from the city, leaving everything muted and gray. He raised one hand, and a matte black SUV materialized at the curb with the obedience of a well-trained dog. A driver emerged, umbrella already open. "Mr. Whitaker? Can you give us a few blocks?" The lady needs to get home safely." "Of course, sir." Mara's feet had moved before her brain could protest. Inside the SUV, heated leather seats embraced her damp clothes, and the city became a watercolor blur through tinted windows. "I should pay for gas," she said absurdly. "It's fine." He brushed at a smudge of her makeup on his coat lapel, looking more amused than annoyed. "Where to?" "East 83rd. Between 2nd and 3rd. Something flickered in his gray eyes, curiosity replacing the polite detachment. "Near Carl Schurz Park. You know it? I walk there sometimes." He said it like a confession. Then didn't fill the silence with small talk. She found herself grateful for that. For his lack of probing questions about her situation or her story. The SUV moved like a whisper through traffic. By the time they reached her block, her heartbeat had settled into something resembling normal. As the car eased to a stop, she reached for the door handle. "Thank you. Really. I can't tell you what this means." "If he bothers you again," the stranger said, "call me." He slid a card from his inner coat pocket, the paper thick and expensive between her fingers. No title, just a name embossed in simple black letters. Daniel Whitaker. Below it, a phone number. The name tugged at her memory like a half-remembered song, familiar, but just out of reach. "I'm Mara," she said as the driver appeared with his umbrella. "Mara Alvarez." "Take care, Miss Alvarez." The SUV pulled away, leaving her standing on wet pavement with his card pressed against her palm like a small flame. Something had shifted in the morning's rhythm. In the way the city hummed around her, upstairs in her one-bedroom apartment, she set the card on her thrift store table and opened her laptop. The keys bore the fingerprints of bills paid late and assignments. Finished after midnight shifts at the crisis hotline where she worked while finishing her counseling degree. She typed his name into the search bar. The results made her breath catch. Whitaker Ventures, Whitaker Group. Boardroom photos and business headlines, acquisition announcements, and philanthropy galas. A Forbes profile with a sentence that made her read it twice. Billionaire tech mogul turned social impact investor. There was a candid shot of him at Carl Schurz Park, wearing jeans and an old baseball cap, a golden retriever at his side. He looked younger in the photo, less guarded. She closed the laptop with shaking hands, the absurdity hitting her like a physical blow. She'd thrown herself into the arms of a man whose net worth rivaled small countries, who probably had entire teams of security professionals to handle situations. Like desperate women in train stations, the knock on her door came 3 hours later. 3 soft, polite taps that made her freeze halfway through making tea. Through the peephole, she saw a familiar face framed by rain-dampened hair. Priya held a container of soup and wore the expression she reserved for medical emergencies. "Open up," I texted. "You're apparently living in a dead zone where messages go to die." Mara let her in, relief flooding her chest like warm water. Priya took in the scene with quick triage eyes, damp coat draped over a chair. The business card on the table, Mara's trembling hands. Bad morning. Mara told her everything. The encounter. The ride, the late discovery that her rescuer was famous enough to have Wikipedia entries. Priya listened without interruption, ladling soup while Mara's words tumbled out in a rush that tasted like copper and fear. "So you hugged Daniel Whitaker in Grand Central to avoid your ex-husband." Priya's voice held the kind of amazement reserved for particularly spectacular coincidences, only in New York. "It wasn't a meet-cute," Mara said flatly. "No." Brown eyes softened with understanding. "But it might be a lifeline. Has Colin been escalating?" He filed a motion to reduce alimony. "Claims I don't deserve support because I abandoned a stable marriage for selfish reasons." The anger in her voice was clean and sharp. Better than the fear that had been drowning her for weeks. They ate soup while rain freshened against the windows. When Priya left, the apartment felt less haunted, the walls less likely to close in. Mara washed dishes and wiped counters, normal domestic rituals that helped settle her nerves. She traced the embossed letters on Daniel Whitaker's card once. Just once, then tucked it into her wallet. She didn't plan to call him. By evening, plans had become irrelevant. The gray sedan parked across the street had been there too long. A figure in a dark hoodie loitered under the scaffolding of the construction. Site next door, texting with unusual intensity. When she took her trash to the curb, a voice behind her said, almost gently, "You're hard to reach, Mara." She turned, her heart slamming against her ribs. Colin stood 3 feet away, perfectly groomed, despite the damp evening. He had the look of a man who believed his time was always being stolen, his patience always tested by lesser beings. "You can't avoid me forever," he said, as if reciting established law. "I left you messages." "You left threats," she replied, forcing her voice. Steady. "And I'm done being an echo of your wants." He laughed, soft and knowing. "I'm renegotiating our agreement, and your lawyer will discover I have very good reason to revisit the terms."
What reason?
The sound of a radiator somewhere in the building was high and desperate, like a small animal in pain, because you've been living with a man. Colin's smile showed too many teeth. He's a very wealthy man. "I have photographs, Mara. Witnesses. Your secret sugar daddy changes everything." "What are you talking about?" Mara's voice came out smaller than she'd intended, but Colin's satisfied expression told her he'd heard the tremor. "The SUV this morning. The driver calling you by name. Did you think I wouldn't notice?" Colin stepped closer, and she caught the familiar scent of his cologne, expensive and cloying. "I know you, remember? You can't afford cab fare most days, but suddenly you're riding in vehicles that cost more than your annual salary." The gray sedan's engine purred to life across the street. "Not random, then?" "Surveillance. You're having me followed," she said, the pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. "I'm protecting my interests. Our divorce agreement included a morality clause, Mara. If you're cohabitating, if you're being supported by another man, that changes the financial obligations." "I'm not living with anyone." The words felt inadequate against his certainty. "Pictures say otherwise. You getting into Daniel Whitaker's vehicle. Looking very comfortable with a man worth $9 billion. Colin's smile widened at her shock. "Yes, I know who he is. The question is, how long has this been going on?" Her mind raced. The photographs could only show this morning, her one encounter with a stranger who'd shown kindness. But Colin's tone suggested he believed something deeper, more calculated. "It's not what you think. It never is." He pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo. Mara saw herself climbing into the black SUV, Daniel's hand on her back, both of them framed by the umbrella. From this angle, with this lighting, it looked intimate, planned. "My lawyer is very excited about this development." The door opened in. The building behind them, Mrs. Chen, from 3B, emerged with her small dog. Took one look at Colin's presence and retreated quickly back inside. Even strangers could sense his particular brand of menace. "One morning," Mara said, desperation making, her voice rise. "I met him one time. We'll let the court decide how credible that sounds." Colin pocketed his phone with theatrical satisfaction. $9 billion, Mara. You certainly upgraded from a simple financial advisor." The insult hit like a slap. But beneath her anger, fear was growing. Colin specialized in making reality bend to his version of events. In their marriage, he'd convinced her that her memory was faulty, her perceptions wrong, her reactions too emotional. In divorce court, he'd painted her as unstable, ungrateful. A woman who'd abandoned a good man for selfish whims. Now he had photographs, a narrative that would fit perfectly with his established pattern. Mara as opportunist, as gold digger, as someone who'd orchestrated her own rescue for financial gain. "I'm not giving up the alimony," she said. The court decided what was fair. "The court didn't know about your billionaire boyfriend?" Colin's voice dropped to the tone he'd used during their marriage when he wanted to sound reasonable while delivering threats. "But they will now, along with evidence of your strategic planning, your deliberate targeting of wealthy men." He turned to leave, then paused, savoring his exit line. "Oh, and Mara, when this comes out, and it will, think about what it does to his reputation. Billionaires don't like their private business splashed across tabloids, especially don't like being portrayed as sugar daddies to desperate divorcees." The gray sedan pulled away from the curb as Colin disappeared around the corner, leaving Mara standing on the wet sidewalk with the taste of copper in her mouth. Upstairs, she double-locked her door and called Sandra, her lawyer. Voicemail. She tried Priya. No answer. The business card felt heavier in her hands now, weighted with consequences she hadn't considered. Daniel Whitaker had helped a stranger without question, and now that kindness was about to become tabloid fodder. She had to warn him. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. It rang once before a familiar voice answered. Daniel Whitaker, it's Mara. Mara Alvarez. From this morning. The words tumbled out. I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you need to know. Are you all right? The concern in his voice was immediate, genuine. My ex-husband was having me followed. He has photographs of us, of me getting into your car. He's going to use them in court, and he's threatening to go to the media. She took a shaky breath. I'm so sorry. Never meant for you to get dragged into my mess. Silence stretched between them. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Become more careful. Where are you now? Home, my apartment. Stay there. Lock your doors. I'm sending someone. Shh. You don't need to do that. I just wanted to warn you so you could prepare, maybe have your lawyers issue a statement or something. Mara. Her name sounded different in his voice. Less polite, more personal. This isn't your fault. And it's not something you should handle alone. But the publicity, the tabloids have been writing about me for 15 years. I'm not afraid. Of Colin Reeves or his photographs. There was steel beneath the calm now. Are you? The question caught her off guard. Was she afraid? Of Colin, yes. Of losing the alimony that kept her afloat while she finished school? Absolutely. But of some billionaire's scandal management team of lawyers in expensive suits who specialized in making problems disappear? I don't know, she admitted. Then let me help you figure it out. Someone will be there in 20 minutes. His name is Marcus, and he works for me. He'll make sure you're safe tonight. Can't afford. Security, you're not paying for it. His tone brooked no argument. We'll talk tomorrow.
Oh.
There are things about your situation you don't understand yet. What do you mean? But the line had gone dead. Mara stared at her phone, Daniel's words echoing in her head, things she didn't understand. What could he possibly know about her situation that she didn't? The knock came exactly 20 minutes later. Through the peephole, she saw a man in a dark suit, early 50s, with the alert posture of ex-military. He held up an ID badge. Miss Alvarez, I'm Marcus Webb. Mr. Whitaker sent me. She opened the door, keeping the chain engaged. Oh, the ID looked official, professional. Marcus waited patiently while she studied it. How do I know you're really from Daniel Whitaker? You don't, Marcus said simply. But you called him 18 minutes ago from this number, and he's very concerned about your safety. If you'd prefer, you can call him back and verify that he sent me. She did, hands still shaking. Daniel answered on the first ring. Did Marcus arrive? Yes, but I don't understand why you think I need protection. Colin's manipulative, but he's not violent. Mara. Daniel's voice was patient but firm. Colin Reeves isn't just your ex-husband. He's been under investigation by the SEC for the past 8 months. His firm is hemorrhaging money, and he's facing federal charges for securities fraud. The alimony he's trying to eliminate is probably the only liquid asset he has left. The words hit her like physical blows. Securities fraud. Federal charges. The room seemed to tilt around her. That's impossible. He's successful. He has clients. He had clients. Most of them pulled their money last spring when the first allegations surfaced. The marriage counselor who recommended your divorce was paid by one of Colin's former partners to encourage the split. They needed him emotionally destabilized, focused on something other than covering his financial tracks. Mara sank into her chair, the phone pressed to her ear like an anchor. How do you know all this? Because Colin Reeves stole $40 million from one of my charitable foundations 18 months ago. I've been tracking him ever since. The silence stretched until Marcus knocked gently on the door. Miss Alvarez, are you all right? She wasn't all right. Nothing was all right. Her marriage had been a lie, her divorce had been orchestrated, and the stranger who'd saved her in Grand Central Wasn't a stranger at all. You knew, she whispered into the phone. This morning, you knew who I was. Yes, you used me. The betrayal. Cut deeper than Colin's threats ever could. You saw an opportunity, and you took it. No. Daniel's voice was steady, but she could hear something underneath. Something that might have been regret. I saw a woman who needed help. Everything else came after. I don't believe you. Then let me prove it. Tomorrow, let me show you what. Colin has really been doing what he's still planning to do. After that, if you want to walk away, I won't stop you. Outside her window, another gray sedan had taken up position across the street. Colin's surveillance or Daniel's protection. She couldn't tell which. One day, she said finally. One day, Daniel agreed. Marcus will stay tonight. In the morning, we'll talk. After she hung up, Marcus positioned himself in her hallway, professional and unobtrusive. She tried to read, to eat, to pretend her world hadn't fractured along. New lines. At midnight, she stood at her window, looking down at the street. 2 sedans now, one gray, one black. Players in a game she was only beginning to understand. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number, enjoying your bodyguard. Tomorrow the photos go public, unless you cooperate. Colin. She showed the message to Marcus, who read it without expression and made a phone call in a language she didn't recognize. Get some sleep, he told her afterward. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. Mara lay in bed listening to the city's nighttime. Symphony, rain against glass, sirens in the distance, the soft murmur of Marcus speaking to someone on his radio. She thought about Daniel's hands on her back that morning, protective and sure. About Colin's smile as he delivered his threats. About $40 million in federal investigations and the strange mathematics of coincidence. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She was going to find out what Daniel Whitaker really wanted from her, even if the answer destroyed what was left of her carefully reconstructed life. Daniel's office occupied the 42nd floor of a glass tower that scraped Manhattan's gray morning sky. Mara stepped out of the elevator into a reception area that whispered of money so old it had forgotten its own origins. Persian rugs over polished concrete. Art that belonged in museums. Furniture that cost more than most people's cars. Marcus had delivered her here with the efficiency of a military operation, complete with a route designed to avoid photographers who'd apparently begun staking out her building at 5 a.m. Miss Alvarez, a woman in an impeccably tailored suit, approached with a smooth glide of expensive heels on expensive floors. I'm Catherine Morrison, Mr. Whitaker's assistant. He's waiting for you. The office beyond the mahogany doors could have housed her entire apartment twice over. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Central Park that probably cost more per square foot than most Manhattan real estate. Daniel stood silhouetted against the morning light, hands clasped behind his back. Thank you for coming, he said without turning around. Did I have a choice? Mara remained near the door, suddenly aware of her thrift store coat and discount shoes in this temple to corporate power. He turned then. She saw that he looked tired, as if he'd spent the night making difficult calculations. There's always a choice. I'm hoping you'll make the right one. A conference table dominated one corner of the office, its surface covered with files, photographs, and what looked like financial documents. Daniel gestured toward it. Everything Colin Reeves has done, is doing, and plans to do. Sit, please. She approached the table like someone defusing a bomb. The photographs made her stomach clench. Colin entering buildings she didn't recognize, meeting with men in expensive suits, shaking hands outside offices with names like Meridian Capital and Apex Holdings. Your ex-husband is what we call a sophisticated thief, Daniel said, settling into the chair across from her. He doesn't break into houses. He convinces people to hand him the keys. A file labeled Reeves' financial portfolio lay open between them. The numbers inside might as well have been written in Sanskrit for all the sense they made to her. $40 million? She asked. From my foundation, yes. But that was just the beginning. Colin has been running what amounts to a Ponzi scheme for 3 years. Using new investor money to pay returns to existing clients while skimming millions for himself. Mara stared at a photograph of Colin at what looked like a charity gala, all teeth and charm in a tuxedo that probably cost more than her monthly rent. I would have known we were married. I would have seen signs. You saw what he wanted you to see. Daniel's voice was gentle but implacable. Expensive dinners, nice vacations, the illusion of success. What you didn't see was the second set of books, the offshore accounts, the careful manipulation of documentation. He slid another file across the table. This one was labeled with her name. "Don't," she said, but her hands were already moving toward it. The first page was a copy of her marriage certificate. The second was a financial disclosure form she'd never seen before, dated 3 days after her wedding, showing her as a co-owner of Reeves Financial. "I never signed this, no. But your signature's on it." Daniel leaned forward, his gray eyes steady on hers. "Colin forged your name on dozens of documents. If the second investigation leads to criminal charges, you could be prosecuted as a co-conspirator." Words hit her like ice water. "That's impossible. I didn't know anything about his business. Ignorance isn't a defense in financial fraud cases. Not when your name is on the incorporation papers, the bank account authorizations, the investment prospectuses." Daniel's voice remained calm, but she could see tension in the line of his shoulders. "Colin made sure that if he went down, he'd take you with him." She turned pages with numb fingers, seeing her forged signature on document after document, her name attached to companies and accounts she'd never heard of. By the time she reached the last page, her hands were shaking. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because Colin's endgame isn't just avoiding alimony payments. It's making you the scapegoat for his crimes." Daniel stood, moving to the window with the restless energy of a caged predator. The photographs from yesterday morning were just the opening move. He's going to claim you were his partner all along, that your marriage was a cover for criminal enterprise, that your divorce was staged to protect assets, but that's insane. No one would believe that. Daniel turned back to her, and something in his expression made her stomach drop. "Mara, where did you meet Colin?" "At a coffee shop near Hunter. I was studying, and he struck up a conversation about my textbooks." The memory felt suddenly fragile, suspect. It was random, coincidence. The coffee shop was 3 blocks from his office. "You went there every Tuesday and Thursday at the same time for 6 weeks before he approached you." Daniel's voice was clinical now, delivering facts like a pathologist detailing cause of death. "He'd been watching you, researching you, planning the entire encounter." The conference room felt like it was shrinking around her. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've spent 18 months investigating every aspect of Colin's life, including his recruitment strategies. He targeted women in graduate programs, particularly those studying psychology or counseling. Women who were intelligent enough to appear credible to investors, but naive enough about finance to be manipulated. She thought about their courtship, the way Colin had seemed so interested in her studies, so supportive of her career goals. The way he'd encouraged her to focus on school while he handled all their financial matters. There were others. Before you, all divorced now, all facing potential criminal liability for their ex-husband's crimes. Daniel returned to the table, his presence suddenly overwhelming in the confined space. "You were just the most successful recruitment." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Outside the windows, Manhattan continued its relentless dance of commerce and ambition, oblivious to the small human dramas playing out in towers of glass and steel. "So what do you want from me?" Mara asked finally. "Your cooperation? Help me build a case against Colin that will stick, and I'll make sure you're protected from prosecution." Daniel's voice was steady, businesslike. "You have access to him then. My investigators don't. We'll try to contact you to manipulate you into supporting his version of events. When he does, I need you to document everything. You want me to wear a wire? I want you to survive this." The mask of professional calm slipped for just a moment, revealing something raw underneath. Colin is desperate, and desperate men make dangerous choices. The surveillance, the threats, the media manipulation, that's just the beginning. Mara stood, needing distance from the table and its terrible revelations. "And if I refuse, then you'll face federal prosecutors alone." with Colin's forged signatures as evidence of your guilt and his testimony painting you as the mastermind. Behind a $40 million fraud, Daniel's gray eyes never wavered from hers. How long? Do you think you'll last in federal prison? The threat hung between them like smoke, impossible to ignore. She understood now why he'd sent Marcus, why he'd known so much about her situation. This wasn't rescue, it was recruitment. She was just another asset to be managed in his war against Colin Reeves. The words came out quiet, almost conversational. You knew all of this yesterday morning. You let me think you were helping me out of kindness? I was helping you. You were manipulating me, just like Colin did. She grabbed her purse, her coat, anything that would get her moving toward the door. You're exactly like him, no? Daniel was on his feet now, moving to block her path. Nothing like Colin Reeves. You research women, you plan encounters, you manipulate them into doing what you want. Anger was better than fear, cleaner than the sick feeling in her stomach. The only difference is your net worth. The difference, Daniel said, and his voice was suddenly cold enough to freeze blood, is that I'm trying to keep you alive. She pushed past him toward the door, but his next words stopped her cold. Colin didn't just forge your signature on financial documents, Mara. He took out a $2 million life insurance policy on you 6 months ago. You're worth more, too. Him dead than alive. The door seemed impossibly far away. The expensive rug beneath her feet might as well have been quicksand. That's not possible. I would have known. He listed you as disabled due to depression and anxiety, claimed you were unable to manage your own affairs. The policy was approved based on medical records. He submitted showing a history of mental health treatment and suicidal ideation. Turned slowly, the world tilting around her. I've never been treated for depression. I've never been suicidal. I know. Daniel's expression had shifted again, become something she couldn't read. But the medical records exist, complete with doctor's notes and prescription histories. All expertly forged, all filed with insurance companies and government agencies. The full scope of Colin's planning hit her like a physical blow. It's not just financial fraud, but identity theft, insurance fraud, the systematic destruction of her credibility and autonomy. And underneath it all, the terrible implication of that life insurance policy. He's going to kill me, she whispered. Not if I can stop him. Daniel moved closer, but carefully, as if approaching something wild that might bolt. But I need your help to do it. Why should I trust you? How do I know this isn't just another manipulation? For a long moment, Daniel was quiet. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight she hadn't heard before. Because my sister was married to a man like Colin. Financial fraud, forged documents, life insurance policies. I was building my first company when it started, too busy to see the signs. His jaw tightened. By the time I realized what was happening, Sarah was dead. Car accident on a mountain road, except the brake lines had been cut. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Mara saw something crack in Daniel's carefully controlled facade, a glimpse of old grief and newer determination. Sorry, she said, meaning it. Colin Reeves uses the same playbook, the same lawyers, even the same insurance company. When I saw your name on that marriage certificate 18 months ago, when I realized he was following the exact same pattern. Daniel moved to his desk, pulled out a silver-framed photograph of a woman with his eyes and a warm smile. I couldn't let it happen again. Mara sank back into the conference chair, overwhelmed by the weight of revelation. So you've been watching me for 18 months, protecting you? There's a difference, is there? She looked at the files scattered across the table, evidence of surveillance that went far beyond casual observation. You know where I work? Where I go to school, what coffee shop I frequent. You probably know my class schedule, my work shifts, my medical history. Daniel's silence was confirmation enough. Yesterday morning wasn't coincidence, she continued, the pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. You were at Grand Central because you knew I'd be there. You knew Colin would be there too. Yes, the single word cut through her like a blade. She'd been so grateful for his intervention, so relieved to find sanctuary in a stranger's arms. But there had been no stranger, no spontaneous kindness. Just another manipulation in a game she was only beginning to understand. Get out, she said quietly. Mara, get out. The words exploded from her with volcanic force, echoing off the office's expensive walls. "All of you, everyone, just leave me alone. I'm done being anyone's pawn." He was on her feet, moving toward the door, when Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at the display, and his face went white. "Answer it," he said, holding the phone toward her. "It's Colin. I'm not answering anything. I'm leaving. If you don't answer, he'll know you're here. He'll know we've talked." Daniel's voice was urgent now, stripped of its earlier calm. "Please, just listen to what he says." Against her better judgment, she took the phone. "Hello, Colin? Mara, sweetheart?" His voice was warm honey over broken glass. "I hope you slept well. I know you had company last night." The endearment made her skin crawl, but she kept her voice level. "What do you want?" "To apologize, actually. Yesterday was crude of me, threatening you on the street like some common thug. You deserve better treatment from the man who loved you for 3 years." Daniel was recording the call, she realized. Some app on his phone was capturing every word. "Colin, we're divorced. You don't get to." I know. I've been thinking about that, about us, about the mistakes I made." His voice dropped to the intimate tone he'd used during their marriage when he wanted something. "What if I told you the alimony situation could be resolved? What if I told you there was a way for both of us to come out of this financially secure? I'd say you were lying." Colin's laugh was soft, indulgent. "Meet me for dinner tonight. 7 o'clock, that little Italian place on 79th we used to go to. Let me explain what I'm offering." "I'm not meeting you anywhere, Mara." The warmth drained from his voice like water from a broken dam. "You're going to want to hear this offer? Because the alternative is federal prison, and I don't think you'd do well in that environment." The line went dead. Daniel was already moving, gathering files, issuing instructions to people Mara couldn't see. "Catherine, I need the car downstairs in 5 minutes. Full security detail. Get me Assistant Director Morrison." "At the FBI?" "What's happening?" Mara asked. "He's accelerating his timeline. The dinner invitation is a setup, probably his last chance to get you alone before everything goes public." Daniel shrugged into his suit jacket with military precision. "Need to move you somewhere secure?" "I'm not going anywhere with you." The betrayal was still fresh, still burning in her chest. "You've been lying to me from the beginning." Daniel stopped his frantic preparations, turned to face her fully. "And I'm still trying to save it. Colin's not planning to negotiate tonight, Mara. He's planning to eliminate the only witness who can connect him to $40 million in fraud. Then I'll go to the police myself. I'll tell them everything." "With what evidence?" "Your word against a man who's been building a case against you for 3 years. He has forged documents with your signature, financial records, showing you as a co-conspirator, medical files suggesting you're mentally unstable." Daniel's voice was patient but urgent. "You walk into a police station today and you'll be arrested before you finish giving your statement." The trap was perfect, she realized. Every possible avenue of escape had been closed off, every potential ally compromised or co-opted. She could run to the authorities and be branded a criminal. She could trust Daniel and remain a pawn in someone else's game. Or she could face Colin alone and very likely die for her trouble. There has to be another way. There is. Neil moved closer, and for the first time since she'd learned the truth, his voice held something that sounded like genuine emotion. "Help me finish what I started 18 months ago. Help me destroy Colin Reeves completely, and I promise you'll be free of all of this." Outside the windows, storm clouds were gathering over Central Park, turning the morning gray and ominous. Somewhere in the city below, Colin was planning her destruction with the methodical precision of a chess master moving toward checkmate. "One condition," she said finally. "Name it. After this is over, after Colin is in prison or dead or whatever, you're planning for him. You disappear from my life completely. No more protection, no more surveillance, no more games." She met his gray eyes steadily. "I never want to see you again." Something flickered across Daniel's face, too quick to interpret. "Pain, maybe, or relief?" "Agreed," he said. "But as Marcus?" Appeared in the doorway, and Daniel began issuing new instructions as they prepared to move her to another safe house in another part of the city. Mara couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a deal with the devil, and in her experience, The devil always collected his due. The safe house was a penthouse apartment on the Upper West Side that probably cost more per month than Mara's annual salary. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the Hudson River, while inside, federal agents moved through rooms with the quiet efficiency of people accustomed to life-or-death situations. "This is Agent Rebecca Chen, FBI Financial Crimes Division," Daniel said, introducing a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an air of barely contained energy. "She's been working the Reeves case for 6 months." Agent Chen studied Mara with the calculating gaze of someone who'd spent years separating truth from fiction. "Miss Alvarez, I need you to understand the gravity of this situation. Your ex-husband has committed federal crimes spanning multiple states and involving foreign bank accounts. The penalties he's facing include 25 years in federal prison, and he's decided I'm going down with him," Mara said flatly. "Actually, it's worse than that." Chen opened a tablet, swiped to a series of financial documents. "Colin isn't planning to go to prison at all. He's been moving money offshore for 8 months, establishing new identities, creating escape routes. The life insurance policy on you is just the final piece of his exit strategy." A chill ran down Mara's spine. Exit strategy. He kills you, collects $2 million in insurance money, and disappears to a country without extradition treaties. Jin's voice was clinical, matter of fact. "We've seen this pattern before with sophisticated financial criminals. Clean break, new life funded. By their final victim." Daniel stood by the windows, tension radiating from his shoulders like heat. "Which is why tonight's dinner invitation is so urgent. Colin's timeline has accelerated." "Why?" Mara asked. "What's changed?" Agent Chen exchanged a look with Daniel that Mara didn't like. "Show her," Chen said. Daniel pulled up something on his phone, then handed it to her. It was a news article from the New York Post, published 2 hours ago. The headline made her stomach plummet. "Billionaire secret. Romance. Daniel Whitaker spotted with mysterious brunette." The photo was from yesterday morning, the same one Colin had shown her. But now it was splashed across a tabloid website with speculation about Daniel's love life and her identity. "He leaked it," she breathed. "To force our hand," Daniel confirmed. "Now that our connection is public, Colin can claim you've been feeding me information about his business, that you're my inside source. It provides motive for his claims about your criminal conspiracy." Mara scrolled through the article, her dread deepening with every paragraph. The reporter had done their homework, identifying her by name, mentioning her divorce, even speculating about her financial situation. By evening, this would be everywhere. "My life is over," she said quietly. "Not if we stop him tonight." Agent Chen leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Colin's made a mistake by accelerating his timeline. He's planning something public, something that will definitively frame you and eliminate you as a witness. If we can catch him in the act, you want to use me as bait?" The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. The dinner invitation. The public location. "You want me to meet him?" With full surveillance and backup, Daniel said quickly. "You'll never be in real danger." "Never be in real danger?" Mara laughed, high and sharp. "I'm already in real danger. I've been in danger for 3 years without knowing it." She stood, pacing to the windows, needing distance from their plans and calculations. "And now you want me to walk into his trap so you can spring yours? It's the only way to get evidence that will stick," Agent Chen said. "Financial fraud is complicated, easy for defense attorneys to muddy with technical arguments. But attempted murder? Caught on video with federal agents as witnesses? That's life in prison without parole, assuming he doesn't succeed in actually murdering me." Daniel moved closer, and something in his expression made her pulse quicken. "I won't let that happen." "How can you promise that? You don't control everything, despite what you think." She turned back to the window, watching boats move along the Hudson like toys in a bathtub. What if something goes wrong? What if Colin's smarter than you think? Then I'll die before I let him touch you. Quiet conviction in Daniel's voice made her turn. He was standing 3 feet away, gray eyes steady on hers, and for the first time since learning the truth about his surveillance, she saw something genuine in his expression. "Why?" she asked. "Why does this matter so much to you? And don't tell me it's just about your sister. There's something else." Daniel glanced at Agent Chen, who took the hint and stepped into the kitchen, giving them privacy. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, more personal. "Because I've been watching you for 18 months, and somewhere along the way, it stopped being about Sarah's memory or justice for Colin's victims." He ran a hand through his dark hair, suddenly looking younger and more uncertain. "It became about you. About the way you help people on that crisis hotline at 2 in the morning, about how you study in that coffee shop with complete focus, about how you feed stray cats even though you can barely afford your own food. You've been stalking me. I've been falling in love with you." The admission hung between them like a bridge neither of them knew how to cross. I know how that sounds. I know how impossible it is given the circumstances, but it's the truth. Mara felt something shift inside her chest, a dangerous warmth that had nothing to do with the apartment's heating system. "You don't know me. You know my routines, my habits, but you don't know who I am. I know you stayed married to Colin for 3 years because you believed in keeping promises, even when those promises were destroying you." Daniel stepped closer, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his gray eyes. "I know you chose counseling as a career because you want to help people heal from trauma. I know you have nightmares about your marriage, but you've never told anyone, not even your best friend." The accuracy of his observations was unsettling, intimate in a way that felt like violation and connection simultaneously. "Does it give you the right to manipulate me?" "No, it doesn't." His voice was rough now, loaded with emotion. "But it gives me the right to protect you, to care what happens to you, to want you to survive this. Even if it means lying to me, even if it means you'll hate me forever." Daniel's smile was rueful, self-aware, but you probably will after tonight. Before she could ask what he meant, Agent Chen returned with a cup of coffee and an expression of professional urgency. "We need to make a decision," she said. "Colin just confirmed the dinner reservation. 7 o'clock at Romano's on East 79th. He's planning something, and we need to be ready." Mara looked between them, these two people who'd inserted themselves into her life with their competing agendas and conflicting truths. Outside, the afternoon was fading toward evening, toward whatever confrontation awaited her in a restaurant she'd once considered romantic. "What exactly are you expecting to happen?" she asked. "Colin will try to get you alone, probably suggest going somewhere private after dinner," Agent Chen explained. "He'll make his pitch, try to convince you to support his version of events. When you refuse, he'll escalate to threats, then to action." Action meaning what? Physical coercion. Possibly a staged accident or suicide attempt. Chen's voice remained clinical, but Mara saw sympathy in her eyes. "We'll have agents in the restaurant, on the street, and surrounding buildings. The moment he makes a move, we'll take him down. And if he doesn't make a move, if he's smarter than you think and just wants to have dinner, then we'll have missed our chance," Daniel said quietly. "And he'll try again tomorrow, or next week, with a plan we haven't anticipated." The choice was no choice at all, really. She could hide in safe houses for the rest of her life, always looking over her shoulder, always waiting for Colin to make his final move. Or she could walk into his trap and hope that Daniel and Agent Chen were better at chess than her ex-husband. "I'll do it," she said finally, "but I have conditions." "Name them," Agent Chen said. "First, I want a weapon, something small, something Colin won't notice." She turned to Daniel, her voice steady, despite the fear coursing through her veins. "Second, I want your word that if something goes wrong, if your plan fails, you'll make sure Colin pays for what he's done, whatever it takes." "Mara, whatever it takes," she repeated. "Promise me." Daniel's gray eyes held hers for a long moment. "I promise. Then let's get this over with." As Agent Chen began outlining the operational details, as technicians arrived with recording equipment and communication devices, Mara felt the strange calm that comes before irrevocable action. Tonight, one way or another, the game would end. She just hoped she'd live to see the final move. Romano's hadn't changed in the years since her divorce. The same red tablecloths, the same wine bottles lining brick walls, the same intimate lighting that had once made her feel sophisticated and loved. Now it felt like a stage set for her own. Funeral. Colin sat at their old corner table, immaculate in a navy suit that probably costs more than her rent. He rose when he saw her, the picture of gentlemanly courtesy, and kissed her cheek with lips that felt like ice. "You look beautiful," he said, pulling out her chair. "Stress suits you?" The recording device felt heavy against her ribs, its presence both comforting and terrifying. Somewhere in the restaurant, FBI agents posed as diners, waiters, busboys. Daniel was across the street in a surveillance van, watching through cameras and listening to every word.
"Hello, Colin."
She settled into the chair, hyper-aware of his proximity, the familiar cologne that now made her stomach clench. "You said you had a proposition, always straight to business." His smile was indulgent, the expression of a patient teacher dealing with an eager student. "I've missed that about you, your refreshing directness." The waiter appeared, a young man with nervous energy who took their drink orders and retreated quickly. Mara wondered if he was FBI or just someone unlucky enough to work the dinner shift. "The proposition," she reminded him. "Right?" Colin leaned back, fingers steepled in the gesture she remembered from their marriage whenever he was about to explain why his needs superseded hers. "I've been thinking about our situation, about the unfortunate misunderstanding with the photographs and the alimony modifications." Unfortunate misunderstanding? Poor choice of words on my part yesterday. I was frustrated, feeling cornered by circumstances beyond my control. His voice took on the reasonable tone she'd learned to fear. "But I've found a solution that benefits both of us." The wine arrived, a bottle of Chianti that Colin ordered without consulting her. He went through the tasting ritual with theatrical precision, nodding approval to the nervous waiter. "Ilmara, there are certain financial irregularities in my business that have come to light recently. Nothing criminal, you understand, just paperwork errors and accounting discrepancies that look worse than they are." He poured wine into her glass with steady hands. "Unfortunately, some of those documents bear your signature. Because you forged it." Colin's smile never wavered. "That would be difficult to prove, wouldn't it? Especially since you were my wife at the time, and wives often help their husbands with business matters." She thought of Agent Chen's words about sophisticated criminals, about how they built their defenses layer by layer, always 3 moves ahead of their pursuers. "What do you want, Colin? Your cooperation?" Simple statement to federal investigators. "Explaining that you were aware of and involved in certain financial decisions during our marriage." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded document. "I've taken the liberty of drafting something appropriate." The paper felt expensive between her fingers, heavy stock with letterhead from a law firm she didn't recognize. The words blurred as she read, legalese that seemed to confirm every accusation he'd leveled at her the day before. "This admits to conspiracy and fraud. This admits to being a loyal wife who supported her husband's business ventures." Colin's voice remained pleasant, conversational. "Sign it, and I'll withdraw the alimony modification. You'll receive your payments as scheduled, and we'll both move on with our lives. And if I refuse, then this becomes much more complicated for both of us." He sipped his wine, savoring it like communion. Federal prosecutors are very interested in financial crimes these days, especially those involving offshore accounts and forged documents. They're particularly interested in cases where married couples work together to defraud investors. The trap was perfect, she realized. Signed the confession, and she became complicit in his crimes. Refuse, and he'd paint her as the mastermind while positioning himself as the victimized husband. "You've thought of everything," she said. "I've had 18 months to plan." Colin's smile sharpened. "Did you really think I didn't know about your billionaire boyfriend's investigation? About the federal surveillance? About the fact that Daniel Whitaker has been watching you since our divorce was finalized?" The wine turned to acid in her mouth. "What are you talking about, oh, Mara?" Sweet, naive Mara. Colin leaned forward, voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "Do you think it was coincidence that you met him at Grand Central? Do you think a man worth $9 billion just happened to be standing in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to play your knight in shining armor?" Her blood had turned to ice water. "You're lying. Daniel Whitaker has been planning yesterday morning's encounter for months. The surveillance of your routines, the timing of my appearance at the station, even the specific location where he positioned himself." Colin's eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. You walked straight into his arms because he knew exactly where you'd be and exactly what you'd need. The recording device against her ribs felt like a weight pressing down on her lungs. In her ear, the tiny communication device remained silent. No reassurance from Agent Chen, no contradiction from Daniel. That's not possible, isn't it? A man loses his sister to financial fraud, spends years hunting the perpetrator, finally gets close to his target's ex-wife. Colin's voice was gentle, almost pitying. What better way to gather evidence than to become her savior, her protector, her lover? He's not my lover. Not yet. But that was the plan, wasn't it? Seduce you, gain your trust, use you to gather evidence against me? Colin reached across the table, covered her hand with his. I know, because I would have done the same thing. The restaurant around them continued its normal rhythm, servers delivering food, couples sharing intimate conversations, the mundane dance of an ordinary evening. But inside Mara's chest, something was dying. Even if that were true, she said carefully, it doesn't change what you've done. The fraud, the forged signatures, the life insurance policy. Colin's grip on her hand tightened. What life insurance policy? The question hit her like a physical blow. The $2 million policy you took out on me 6 months ago, Mara. Colin's voice was suddenly urgent, stripped of its earlier control. I never took out any life insurance policy on you. Why would you think that? In her ear, the communication device crackled to life. Agent Chen's voice, tense and professional. We have a problem. Get out of there now. But it was too late. Understanding crashed over her like cold water, pieces falling into place with terrible clarity. The life insurance policy that didn't exist, the perfect timing at Grand Central. Daniel's extensive knowledge of her routines and habits. She'd been played by both men. But not in the way she'd thought. The life insurance policy was a lie, she whispered. To make. May seem more dangerous, more desperate. Colin released her. Hand sat back in his chair. To convince you that I was planning murder so you'd cooperate with their investigation? The communication device in her ear went silent. Across the street, Daniel was learning what she'd just discovered. That Colin Reeves, for all his faults, had never planned to kill her. But someone else had. We need to leave, Colin said urgently. Both of us right now. It's the man who's been protecting you. The man who claims to love you. He's been planning your death since the day he met you. That's insane, is it? Think about it, Mara. What happens to Daniel's case against me if you die? What happens to the evidence of forged signatures if the primary witness is eliminated? Colin stood, pulled out his wallet. You become a martyred victim, and I become the obvious suspect. He gets his justice for his sister, and I go to prison for a murder I didn't commit. The pieces fit too well. Explained too much.
Ow.
Daniel's protection that felt like surveillance. His knowledge of her routines that went beyond normal investigation. His promise to make Colin pay whatever it takes. The recording device, she breathed, reaching for the wire taped to her ribs, is transmitting everything we've said to thee. Man, planning to frame me for your murder?
Us.
Colin threw money on the table. We need to go now. They moved toward the exit together. Past FBI agents who were too busy coordinating with their surveillance team to notice their targets leaving. Out into the cool evening air, where gray sedans and black SUVs waited on opposite sides of the street like chess pieces positioned for endgame. My car, Colin said, pointing to a silver sedan parked at the corner. How do I know you won't kill me the moment we're alone? Because, Mara, despite everything else I've done, I've never hurt you physically, not once in 3 years of marriage. His voice carried an honesty she'd forgotten he possessed. Can you say the same about the man who's been stalking you for 18 months? She looked back at the restaurant, at the surveillance van across the street, at the web of lies and manipulation that had brought her to this moment. Daniel had saved her from Colin only to destroy them both. The perfect plan, the ultimate revenge. Where will we go? Away from here, away from him. Colin opened the car door, looked back at her with something that might have been regret. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I'm asking you to anyway. One more time. In her ear, the communication device crackled back to life. Daniel's voice, urgent and worried. "Mara, where are you?" The agents lost visual. "Are you all right?" She pulled the device from her ear, let it fall to the pavement where it shattered like her faith in rescue and redemption. Then she got into Colin's car, choosing the devil she knew over the one who'd pretended to be her salvation. As they drove away from Romano's, away from Daniel's surveillance and the FBI's operation, Mara felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the terrible freedom of choice. She didn't know where Colin was taking her, didn't trust his motives or his promises, but she knew with absolute certainty that staying would have meant death. The recording device remained taped to her ribs, still transmitting to Daniel's receivers. Let him hear this, she thought. Let him know that his perfect plan had one fatal flaw. He'd underestimated the woman he'd claimed to love. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere safe," Colin replied. "Somewhere we can figure out how to stay alive." Behind them, the city lights faded into darkness, and ahead lay only uncertainty. But for the first time in 18 months, Mara was no longer anyone's pawn. She was free. The end.